Thank you for choosing to fly with Tim Donaldson today. This is called Listen to the Hand. I didn't make a title. Well, that was the title. And those Johnstonians amongst you will recognise whose hand that is. Let's pretend it started fine. So, Disappointed Idealism. The Lord of the Rings is one of the most expensive films ever made. The production was awash with cash for beards, special effects, location scouting, Land Rovers, posh meals, costumes, props, sets, pointy ears, and more beards. Yet, they still couldn't get the M the right way round. What's going on there? Alfa Romeo, a car maker with a great deal of money to spend and a reputation to preserve. Yet this lifeless nightmare is the best they can manage to put on their advert. So I'll just remove that vulgarity and give you a picture of some daisies or a kitten to look at while I talk for a bit. Now, I know you don't need me to tell you this. I'm preaching to the converted. You know this is bad. But these images were produced by people claiming to be graphic designers who nevertheless have a poor grasp of how letters are made, or at least how they should look. So this is what I'd like to talk about. Why letters look like they do, and how this has affected my work and methods. I have heard it said by one prominent type designer that the best typefaces are produced by people who know how to write, how to use a pen. But I've also heard the opposing view by an equally prominent type designer that one does not need a practical background in using tools to make letters. I take no issue with that. It's just that I've been given opposable thumbs. Well, I haven't on this hand yet at the moment, but I'd like to use those to make things. I don't just want to use them to click a mouse and tap a keyboard. Something's come up on my screen now. Oh, it's gone away. Right, let's see if that moves. Oh, joy. I'm a lettering artist. I'm a calligrapher. And I'm a type designer. And I think we all struggle with the words we use to define the creation of letters. Leaving aside the term calligraphy, which I've always struggled with, we have the terms writing and lettering. But we're already, or still, in trouble, because this is writing, and so is this. So we call this handwriting. This one's easy. Imre Reiner very helpfully tells us what it is. It's like a concrete poetry instruction manual. And here it's easy to differentiate between lettering by Edward Wright and writing by Ernst Schneidler. You wouldn't call the work on the left a piece of writing, but in case you're tempted to call... I must keep my hand away from that. The other one a piece of lettering, here's a formula again. Okay. This A by Edward Cattish is made with 3 strokes. It's writing. This U by David Howells is also made with 3 strokes. This R, made with 133 strokes, is lettering. I haven't managed to count the strokes on this C by Roger Excafon, but it doesn't matter because it's a typeface. Neither writing nor lettering. It's a prefabricated character to be used again and again and again. And this is like Chris Brand. It's rather confusing because for years I thought it was writing, but it's actually draw. The first fear and trembling I experienced at the hands of letter shapes were these epic Futuras which marked up the Thunderbirds. Amalgams of fighter planes, spaceships and Swiss Army knives in the popular British television series from the 1960s. A few years on, and between glam rock and punk, my world was shaken yet again with the discovery of this tatty old book in Widnes Public Library. I bought this one, I didn't steal this one from the library. In particular, this piece of work by Hermann Zapf. And it wasn't just the letters that got me going. I loved the exquisite free arrangement of the forms. Not centred, not left align, not right align, just where he thought they should be. It was a few years before I got hold of a better reproduction of it. Actually, it doesn't look very good on there, but you probably know it. But by that time I was already making my own fakes to try and understand how the master had made these forms. It took me a while to work out that he achieved these modulated shapes. You can't really see my little, can you see my little white bits there? He achieved that by following guidelines set down by Edward Johnston, guidelines for versals. Just double stroke it. So Zapf would write the letters, but then add another stroke to make the letter thicker where he wanted it. So, although they are mostly written, these are actually lettering, in my view. Only just. Zapf eventually made his own instruction manual, not for public consumption, but produced for designers at Hallmark Cards, showing things like how to manipulate the nib to write a line of half thickness, often with disarming frankness. I came across this diary that Zapf designed for the Takeo Corporation in 1983. Although the debossed gold letters were sumptuous, what really captivated me was the way that he controlled the thicks and thins of the letters so that they blended perfectly. At the first A-Type conference I attended in 1984 in London, I sidled up to Hermann Zapf and told him how much I liked these diary letters. And quick as a flash, he whipped out a cheap ballpoint and said, "Oh, I'll do it for you," and wrote it in my book. Oh God, you can't see that at all, can you? No, never mind, looks great on my screen. Oh, well, there's a close-up. So what he'd do is he'd write the letters very quickly, almost like he'd do it almost like a golfer. He'd sort of practice the stroke in the air like this, and then bang, it'd just appear. And then he'd go back and very carefully just add these subtle thickening strokes, like here and here, here. Just a little gesture, not much. And at the same time as Zapf was teaching me that it was okay to cheat, as long as you knew the how and why of it, I discovered the work of this man, Estonian calligraphist Vilu Tuts, and was particularly taken with this piece of brush writing, which of course wasn't writing and wasn't made with a brush either. I think you can see that. Vilu eventually gave me this original, and it was written on some cheap shiny purple mount board and is full of reworkings, double stroking, modulation. You can see it's so old now, the bits of the white, process white or whatever it is now just falling off. It's a great drawing. These book covers by Chris Brand are a less obvious form of lettering. For years I thought these were awesome, and I thought that they were carefully controlled handwriting, and I tried to copy them, and I couldn't. But I found out later, talking to one of Chris Brand's students, that he used a different method completely, a more laborious method to make his letters. He used one of these. He'd draw them with a double pencil, or write them if you like. Is that writing or drawing when it's a double pencil and it's two lines? And then he'd outline them with a fine line, and then he'd fill them in with ink. But that was nothing new. It was something that was demonstrated and recommended by our sponsor, Edward Johnston. At the same time as Zapf and others were granting absolution for leaving the purity of plain writing, teaching me that it was okay to modify and add complexities, I was learning how to construct Roman capitals with a drawing board and a compass. Until Edward Cattish showed me that there was a better way. I didn't need to spend half an hour with draftsman's tools and another minute filling in. I could just write the letter in 3 strokes. And that, in fact, was how it had been made in the first place. I discovered an inspiring commitment and honesty in the work of Ward Dunham, a Green Beret who discovered calligraphy in Vietnam and decided to devote the rest of his life to it. But not just to something as broad as calligraphy. Ward deals almost exclusively in blackletter. This is a working of the Richard Brautigan poem, who was also his friend, and Ward would say it like this: "Fuck me like fried potatoes on the hungriest morning of my goddamn life." He would say it deeper than that. The title of the poem is also the poem. This is another piece by Ward, inspired by the life and writings of Thomas Merton. And I think we can see, and Ward would not mind me saying this or showing this, we can see the things that influence him: Adolf Gottlieb and Rudolf Koch. This is a pointed brush. It adds another dimension to letter making. One is now able to add pressure to the palette of modifiers and control the thickness of a line by pressing or not pressing. The dedicated exponent of this was Carl Georg Hoefer. Carl Georg was Ottmar Hoefer's dad. You may remember Ottmar as the chap in the Helvetica movie with the dicky bow who took them down to the linotype basement to see the drawings. He's also a big fan of donkeys. And then we have the pointed, split, flexible nib. This one's from Birmingham. It can be made to perform in a similar way to the pointed brush, but requires a different set of physical routines. Friedrich Poppel took this tool and manipulated it to make forms in the way a broad-edged pen might make them. So he's created here what I think of as a black letter crescent. I think you can, if you ever used a pointed, split nib, flexible nib, you can see, perhaps you can think your way through how he did that. Another champion of the flexible nib, Herib Murdzai. However, I don't agree with his term flexible pen, because it's only the nib that's flexible. Flexible pen sounds to me like something one might buy in a joke shop.